Italian Football Podcast.
We'll start with Juventus against Atalanta. Big game for the Champions League race, and also for Juventus. If we start off talking about this from the Juventus point of view, the game, of course, finished 2-2. But this was a big game for Juventus because they were in dismal form going into the match. Only one win in 6, and they'd completely fallen out of the title race, and were now looking over their shoulder at Milan, who were right on their tails, and even potentially the likes of Bologna as well. So it was an important game for Juventus, and a kind of a strange game to analyse from the Juventus point of view. In the first half, they largely had the game under control, had lots of efforts, but created nothing of note in terms of actual real chances. Then they went behind. The second half, Juventus were more threatening. Chiesa who was terrible in the first half, was very good in the second half, along with Cambiasso. Those two kind of took the game to Atalanta more, and they turned it around. And they went 2-1 ahead. And you think, well, Juventus are going to win from here. And then they let in a really stupid second goal for Koopmeiners, his second of the game, and they draw 2-2. So it was a strange game, Nima.
I don't know. I thought it was a rather entertaining game. I mean, maybe defensively Allegri wasn't too happy, and he has every right not to be happy. And he's famously said about how you can't concede 2 goals a game, you can't win games that way. But I thought it was a rather entertaining game, to be honest. I thought it was.
For the neutral, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was an entertaining game, but I thought Juve. I liked Juve's tenacity. I liked how Juve reacted to situations. I think they looked good in the first half. I thought they looked in control, to be perfectly honest. Whether that was fool's gold or not, we can get into that. But I felt like Juventus had turned a corner in terms of their bad form. They didn't look like they've done in previous games. I thought this was a step in the right direction from that aspect. But they did concede a goal that somehow was a little bit against the run of play, if you will. But they reacted well to that. I mean, let's remember they equalized pretty well after. I thought that move for the equalizer was actually a nice move.
Yeah, it was a very good move. Yeah,
a very good move with Chiesa winning the ball, and then to Weston McKennie, who played a wonderful assist. I think that was his 9th assist this season, McKennie. And Cambiasso continues to have a breakout season. And then, of course, McKennie again, 4 minutes later for Milik, and it kind of cemented that Juve turned this game on its head. But the problem is that what we've seen with Juve is that they're not really, they aren't there yet. This season, in terms of stability, in terms of it looks better than it did last season, with pretty much the same players. I mean, they haven't exactly strengthened. Some would say they've weakened even. But it's starting to look. It looks better this season than it did last on the pitch. Maybe form points wise after 28 games, it's pretty much identical, and we're going to get into that too. But I think it does look better than it did last season, and I think there is improvement there. I just keep saying this week in, week out, and I firmly believe it. This Juve side aren't there yet. They don't have that kind of experience to kill off games. They've got the experience to come back and never say die attitude. They've kind of got that. We've seen that throughout this season. They are such a difficult team to kill off, and if you don't kill them off, they will come back and turn the game on its head. And they've done it time and time and time again. Winning games late, turning around deficits, and so on and so forth. But they're not there yet to be the top side that wins 3 points after doing that. They've still got a little bit left to reaching that point. mentally as well as qualitatively. Qualitatively, especially, I don't think this is a very good Juventus side. It's identical with the one they had last season, if we're perfectly honest. So, some would even argue it's a worse side than last season. But what we have seen on an individual level, I think Vlahovic has improved this season compared to last. Weston McKennie for sure. I mean, no one thought he would be this good. And so there are things to be positive about this season. But of course, if you're expecting Juve to win the Scudetto and have a fight for the Scudetto until the end of the season, you're going to be disappointed. But I think that's more down to your expectations, to be honest.
I think what Juventus fans want to see, if they're not winning, I think what fans of any club wants to see, if they're not winning trophies, top teams that is, if they're not winning trophies and they're not, like Juventus haven't won a trophy now. This is the third season without trophies. We'll see if they can win the Coppa Italia this season. 3 seasons. You want to be seeing progress. You want to be seeing something being built for the future and clear progress. And we're now in the third season of Allegri, and we've had no progress at all. I mean, the stats are there in black and white. 58 points this season now after 28 games. This time last season, Juventus had 59 points. They, of course, had 15 points deducted, so that they were actually in the table on 44, but on the pitch they had 59. So they have 1 point less this season now after 28 games than they did at this time last season, which is terrible. Last season they were playing in Europe. They had no board. There was complete chaos with all the stuff going on in the courts with the penalties coming up, taking points off, then on. So they had all that kind of situation, and that was always given as excuse last season for Juventus underperforming last season. But they've got all this going on off the pitch. This season there's none of that. They've got no European football. They're playing once a week. Even this Atalanta team, they're playing against an Atalanta team that's exhausted. They've been playing non-stop. And they've got 1 point less. So I mean,
you can't tell me that the football that they don't look better on the pitch than they did last season.
Don't. No,
they do. They absolutely do. They look better in terms of the attacking, and in terms of having an attacking identity. The patterns of play.
Well, the goals. They're not. The attack is no better this season than it was last season
because there's again the quality of the squad. I'm talking about the play. I'm not talking about how many goals you've conceded and how many goals you've scored. I'm talking about actively watching the games. You can't tell me that Juventus aren't better this season than they were last season. It's a much more. It's a team. It's a much more cohesive unit. It's a team that actually looks much more mature than it did last season, with pretty much the same players. Now, is that good enough for Juve as a club? No, but there's also this notion of when you look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see Hollywood superstar, or do you see the reality? Juventus are not a Scudetto winning side. They just aren't. What they are is a team in transition, in a new project.
That's fine, though. That's fine.
And they have improved in terms of how they play on the pitch.
I disagree, and the vast majority of Juventus fans disagree that there's any improvement. There's no style of football. The 28% possession against Napoli says it all about whether Juventus have improved.
One game out of 20.
It's not one play. There's multiple games where they're completely the midfield is dominated virtually every game that they play, and that's down to the manager because Allegri is incapable of having a team that's able to control a game of football. And the excuses are out now. First of all, it was the first season. Then it was all the stuff going off the pitch. This season is something else. The excuses are out. We're in the third season of Allegri. There's been no improvement on points. With Allegri, it's always about results. We're told it's about results with Allegri. Well, the results are worse. So what is it about? Is it about results? Is it about improved play? Because there's neither.
Because this squad isn't good enough.
Neither.
You can't make chicken soup with chicken poo, and this is chicken poo, and it's old dry.
Now it's chicken poo. 6 weeks ago. Now it's chicken poo. 6 weeks ago,
I said they've overperformed all the time.
6 weeks ago,
I said they've overperformed.
6 weeks ago, you were saying that they were going to be 5 points ahead of Inter at the end of March.
No, I did not say that. I said they could potentially be that. What I've had said throughout this entire season, consistently from match day 1 till today, is that Allegri has this Juventus side overperforming. You yourself literally said throughout the season that there are patterns of play. I have never said
said they're patterns of play. I've said it about 2 or 3 times the whole season. I've said this. That's my entire point now, that there are no patterns of play. There are
patterns of play.
There are exceptions. There isn't, Nima.
There is. Come on.
Show me examples of Juventus building from the back in the same way that Inter do with Inzaghi, or the same way.
But they don't play the same way.
They don't.
Like, I don't understand.
They just get it out wide, cross the ball, do a long pass. That's it. They've got no patterns of play.
They do have patterns of play. It's just that you don't like
show
those
me them.
patterns of
Show
play.
me them, Nima.
Just watch the game. What do you mean? Show me them. Look at how Juventus scored the goal for Cambiasso. That's not patterns of play.
Exceptions. Those are exceptions this season.
Like it's nah. Come on.
The excuse. There
is no excuse. There is no excuse.
Allegri has been an unmitigated. Allegri's been an unmitigated.
23-24. The squad is shit. It's not better than this. He has them overperforming. The fact that he was even in the discussions for a title race was a huge overperformance. Huge overperformance. And that's just a fact that you're going to have to accept. Weston McKennie has got 9 assists. That is an overperformance on who he is. It's as simple as that. Like, I can understand that you're not happy with the results, and that's a different thing altogether. But you can't sit and tell me that Allegri has done absolutely shit this season when it's evident for anyone who's watching.
He has less points than last season. There's no improvement in him, man. He's getting paid $9 million a year to underperform.
Him getting paid $9 million is irrelevant to the discussion. That's again to do with the board, the previous board, and what they used to, the Paratici and all that nonsense, right? That's got to do with them. I'm talking about that. I can clearly see Juventus improving on the pitch in terms of how they play. And I look at the quality of the squad. They haven't even strengthened with last season. Like, compared to last season, how have Juve improved qualitatively on the pitch? How? What players have they brought in?
Well, that's down to the manager improving. Again, it comes back to the same debate that we had.
No, I'm talking about in terms of quality of the squad.
Well,
Vlahovic has improved. I think we can say Vlahovic has improved.
For me,
Bremer's been outstanding.
Vlahovic has improved based on
Gatti's been improved.
Gatti has improved from an E to a D. So let's not over
Locatelli's improved from last season to this.
McKennie's improved from an E to a D. We're talking about players who are good enough for Juventus. This is not Tottenham.
No, they're not good enough. That's exactly the point. Juventus. What you want him to do? Weston McKennie suddenly magically turn into Pirlo? Like, what do you want him to do? What do you want from him?
Well, I'll tell you what, it comes back to the debate that we had over Inzaghi versus Allegri and about how how we view players. And I'm certainly not going to take Gatti and McKennie as example of those, but what Daniele Adani said about how you view Inter from 3 years ago, and then you look at players like Mkhitaryan, like Çalhanoğlu, and how Inzaghi has turned these players into players that people are considering as top class players, like Cherby and others that weren't when he signed them. And then how you take the same players at Juventus, who now players that people are considering as not being as
no,
not being
I've never
good
thought
enough.
Juventus had a good squad for the last 2 seasons. I think this has been consistently my point, that I think that Juventus finishing in the top 4 on the pitch with this team last season, the football was worse, was horrible. This season, the football has improved in both phases of play. But the problem is this team qualitatively isn't good enough, and mentally it's not quite there. But if you nuance it, I do see improvement. I really do.
We've got to remember also they're playing once a season. They are fresh.
Once a week, you mean?
You
wish they played once a season.
Yeah, I wish they played once a season. They play well once a season, but yeah, they play once a week, and they should be so super fresh, and that should be such a big advantage. If they were playing twice a week, goodness knows how much even worse they would be doing this season. If they were doing playing twice a week, and they're still doing worse than last season, playing 1 game. I mean, the excuses are out.
There are no excuses.
The excuses are out. 6 weeks ago, before this awful run of form started, everybody, well, not everybody, because the people that know, but there was a lot of people that were saying, "Oh, Juventus are in the title race." Some people even crazy.
They were literally per definition in the title race. When you're leading the league,
and yes, then. But I'm saying that there were people saying that they were going to go on and win the title. They were actually realistically, laughably saying they were realistically going to go on and win the title. They were, and those that said that they weren't were saying that they've improved. That Allegri was improving Juventus, and that next season they would be ready to challenge for the Scudetto.
I think next season, with a proper mercato, for the first time in 2 years, they will be ready to challenge for the Scudetto, depending on who takes over. I don't
Not
think
with
it's going
Allegri,
to
they
be,
won't, because
well,
that's
with
the
Allegri,
whole point. That there's been zero
they would have
improvement
done
under Allegri for
it.
3
That's
years.
not true. It's simply not true that
There
there's been
isn't. The
zero
points
improvement.
are there. The points are there in black and white.
I've given you lots of points to counter that point, and you just say no, because you don't like them. I mean, there has been improvement this season to the last. You're just not happy with the level of the improvement, and that's fair. I'm not saying anything against that. You can be unhappy with the progress and the rate that it's going, but to say that it's been flat, that it's flatlined, is ridiculous.
Well,
it's
the
just
points
not
are
true.
there in black and white now. They've got 1 point less. How can you say there's been improvement? They've got 1 point less.
Because if you look at how Juventus have played this season compared to last season, you'd have to be blind not to concede that there has been improvement on the pitch. Maybe the results haven't improved, but you cannot sit here and tell me that the play on the pitch in both phases of play hasn't improved this season to last. What we have, and also not to mention the mental growth of the team.
They haven't scored. They're not scoring more goals. The defense is pretty much similar level to what it was last season as well. So I don't see if they're not scoring more. They're not conceding less. Where's the improvement?
Well, they are playing better. They are playing, but it's
not a feeling. We're talking about facts.
It's not a feeling. No, we are talking about facts. Watch how Juve play. Don't sit here and tell me that Juve aren't playing better football this season.
Well, that's a subjective thing.
No,
whether
really
they're playing
not.
better. That's
really
your opinion.
That's not my opinion. It's watch Juve play.
No, that's your opinion. Is Juventus playing better. My opinion is they're not. My opinion is there's no improvement
there last season. Juve barely created anything, and it was genuinely unwatchable. But this season, there is actual things there. You see movement, you see patterns of play, you see an identity.
No.
You see something that used to remind you of Juve, even though it's not at the level you wish it was, but there is something there. And to say that, well, no, nothing. I mean, that's just too simplistic for me. I think
I'm talking objectively. Objectively, Juventus have less points. They're not improved. Their attack hasn't improved. The defense hasn't improved. That's subjective.
And
you've got subjective, where your opinion is that they're better.
No,
my opinion is they're not. That's a feeling.
Week in, week out.
That's your opinion, Nima.
That's not my opinion.
But it is your opinion. My opinion is they haven't improved, and most Juventus fans.
Compare
your
Juve,
opinion, though.
Compared Juve, how they play and how they attack, and you're telling me that the individual players haven't improved. That the players that they don't have they actually have an identity.
No, they don't have no identity. That's the problem.
They do.
They have
You're just not happy with where it is.
They have no playing style. They have no patterns of play at all.
Of course they do.
They don't.
They do.
That's the whole point. I mean, listen, look, everybody that's listened to this, leave your opinions in the comments, whether you're a Juventus fan or not a Juventus fan. Do you think Juventus have improved under Allegri? Do you think there's patterns of play? Do you think things have improved? Let's see what everybody else
compared to last season. Yeah, I think there has been. I think it's evident that there has, and there's been improvement on individual levels as well.
If there has been improvement, do you think it's enough of an improvement?
To Chiesa, every single one of these players have improved.
Chiesa hasn't. He's been a disaster this season, Nima. He's been a total disaster. He's been a catastrophe. He's been a catastrophe, Nima.
Sorry, Vlahovic, not Chiesa.
Vlahovic has improved compared to last season and the season last.
That's exactly what I've been saying all along. I've been giving you examples of players that have improved this season compared to last.
But is he better than the Fiorentina of Vlahovic? No, he's not.
Oh, stop. This is becoming a point where literally anything good with Allegri's Juve is countered by something else that is completely irrelevant.
Do you think this Vlahovic now, this season, is a better player than the Vlahovic that was at Fiorentina?
Yes! I see a much more mature player than I saw at Fiorentina.
No.
It's a much more mature
He's a better Vlahovic than last season and the season before, which was obviously terrible. There's no doubt about that.
I'm seeing a much more mature... And
he's getting back to the level that he should be, but he's not... I see
a Vlahovic who is much more mature, much more complete as a striker than he was 2 years ago. It doesn't mean that he's fully complete now. I'm saying that compared to when he came from Fiorentina, he was still very naive, a bit like a kid. Now, since joining Juve, it's been very few difficult years, not just for him, but for Juve as a whole. But this season, I definitely see an improvement on Vlahovic. I definitely see an improvement on McKennie. I definitely see an improvement on Locatelli, on Bremer.
Locatelli, zero improvement. Locatelli's no better. Locatelli is completely the same player that he was at Sampdoria.
No, it's not.
I'm
No,
sorry, Nima.
no.
Again, those listening to this podcast, answer these points. Do you think Locatelli is a better player now than he was at Sassuolo? No,
No. I'm not talking about Sassuolo. Again, I'm talking about this season compared to last. And of course, he's a better player than he was at Sassuolo.
no, he's not. He hasn't improved at all from the Sassuolo play. He's exactly the same player.
He's improved.
Is he any better than the Locatelli that we saw at Euro 2020 in 2021?
Why are
He's
we
not.
comparing with Euro 2020 now? Where I'm comparing
Because that's
Juve
when
with
Juventus signed him. Juventus signed him that summer.
I'm comparing Juve this season with last season, and I think that from Bremer to Danilo to McKennie to Locatelli to Vlahovic to Cambiaso, I see improvement from one season to the next. And I think it's ridiculous to claim that there isn't. I see a Juve that actually has an attacking identity, even though it's not fantastic and joga bonito, but it is an attacking identity. I see a Juve with mental growth of a Juve side that is starting to show that they're building. There's something there now. After 3 years of absolute darkness and horror, I see something there. Now, translating that onto the pitch is different. That is the next step. And I don't think that Allegri is going to be there to do it. And I don't think he should be, because you can't have a situation where one half of the fan base hates him and the other half of the fan base...
It's more than one half, I can tell you.
Third, half, quarter, whatever. But
it's only those stupid ultras that put up that stupid banner that seem to like
whatever. Okay, whatever, 20%, whatever, however you want to. But there's a sliver of the Juventus fans that support him, and there's lots of Juventus fans that absolutely despise him. And you can't have this situation.
No,
you just can't. It can't continue. And I think that's why he's going to leave, and that's my feeling as well. But regardless, if Juventus are going to finish in the top four this season, I think it's obvious they are. And if they win a Coppa Italia, that is obvious improvement after an absolute disaster of last season. There was nothing there. I mean, the nuclear bomb went off at Juve last year, and they're picking up the pieces. Now, if you expect Juve to come from that and start winning trophies and fight for the Scudetto until match day 38, I'm sorry, but your expectations are the problem.
I don't. And I've said that all along. I've said that when people were saying they could win the Scudetto this season. I was saying it's laughable to think that they could win the Scudetto. You know,
I think they are doing exactly what can be expected.
But I also think it's laughable, and I've said all along that it's laughable that people see an improvement to the extent that they actually think Allegri, if he was there this season, could actually challenge for the Scudetto. Because there's no improvement.
They did challenge for the Scudetto objectively until match day, whatever it was, 22, 23,
so do many teams. Aston Villa challenged for the Premier League in 97, 98 until Christmas, and then they finished 30 points behind. You have teams that overperform for a while during the season, and they can't keep it up.
What Juve did. That's what Juve did. They overperformed.
Yeah, but I'm talking about those that thought they could actually win the Scudetto this season. It was laughable, and then I'm saying it's laughable. Anybody that thinks that Allegri is improving the team and improving Juventus to be able to challenge for the Scudetto last season. There's no improvement objectively in terms of points.
There is improvement on the pitch and how they play. On an individual
that's your
level.
opinion.
No,
I'm
that's
talking about
objective.
facts.
You cannot.
It's not objective. That's
subjective.
Objective is it's black. It
is black and white. Bremer has improved this season to the last. Vlahovic has improved this season to the last. You can't tell me they haven't. McKennie is having the season of his career since joining Juve. That is an objective fact. Yeah, but Juventus. You can't tell me that's not true.
Yeah, but you're picking out little examples of players here, players there that improve. I'm talking about overall. I'm talking about overall. There's no improvement in Juventus as a team. There's no improvement. That's what I'm saying. That's my opinion. Your opinion is they haven't, but objectively,
I'm saying that there is improvement.
The objective facts are they've got worse this season compared to last. That's the objective.
They haven't gotten worse.
But I'm talking about objective facts.
You're talking about points.
And
the attack. Fine.
The points, the number of the points, the attack, the defense. There's no improvement. Those are objective facts. Then you can have your opinion if they've improved.
I'm not talking about the numbers on the board, whether they be goals conceded, goals scored, or points. I'm talking about the football on the pitch, and the football on the pitch has improved. The problem is that it doesn't translate to points on the board and goals scored and goals conceded, and that is a problem. That is what needs to be addressed. But to basically look at this as a black and white simplistic thing and say, no, look, last season, no, same shit, no difference. That's silly. It's not true. The problem is, it's just like with Inzaghi last season. Inter's Inzaghi played really, really well, but they could not kill off games, and therefore they lost 12 games as a result of it. That That if Inter were losing 12 games, but they weren't creating anything, there's a difference between that and what we saw last season when Inter were creating chances and missing sitters. That's the point I'm talking about. You have to look at the games. You can't just look at the numbers. Just look at the numbers and then do like this. And any idiot with a pair of functioning eyeballs can just look at teletext, look at the standing and say, oh, but I mean, come on.
That's your opinion. My opinion is this season they were even when they were in the title race, they weren't playing well. They were winning 1-0s, they were winning games.
Last season, yeah.
No, but this season as well, they were winning games with up until December. The attackers weren't scoring any goals. It was all goals from headers from corners and defenders and midfielders. I mean, you can see who scored the goals in October, November into December. Who was scoring all the, they were 1-0 wins and it was unsustainable, which is what I said all along. It's unsustainable.
My point is that Juventus are not the finished product. Juventus are not, and neither are Atalanta. They're not. They are projects in transition in year 1 or year 2 or whatever of their project. With Juve, it's literally just 6, 7, 8 months old. I mean, when did Giuntoli take over? So my point is simply that I think there is improvement on the pitch in how the teams play and in how Juventus behave. I see improvement in key players in the starting lineup in terms of how they're playing, looking at the entirety of the season. And whether or not that's enough for Juve is a completely separate discussion. Whether or not Allegri should continue, completely separate discussion. But to claim that there is zero improvement on the pitch and on an individual level, I mean, that's just it's just not true. Then the problem is it's not translating to points. And that is a huge problem. And of course, the manager is always the one to blame for that completely. But if we nuance it...
The only positive that can come of this, and Juventus are on a dreadful run of form, last 7 games, 1 win, 3 draws, 3 losses. The only positive to come of this, as I said last week, is that the Juventus management surely have to look at this and realise he's it's there. He's got to go now. They should be making decisions now, planning for next season. And this should confirm to them that Allegri is not improving the team and they have to hire their next manager now for next season and start building around what that new manager will want.
I think it's obvious.
And if it's Thiago Motta or whoever it may be. Whereas if Juventus had won these last 7 games, maybe they might have made another decision and that would have been a mistake. So I think this can be a positive if it actually leads to Juventus actually doing something about this and making a decision.
Juventus need
just hope they do.
Juventus need to make a decision. Period. Like it's not even about Allegri anymore. It's about what is this Juventus, this new Juve. What is the identity of it in terms of what kind of football do we want to play? We know the identity of the club and how you behave and on the pitch and all of that. That's Allegri sorted all that. They're happy with him there. The question there is now, what do you want to do? What kind of football do you want to play? What do we want to continue with the Allegri style, or do we want to play a more progressive style similar to what Milan and Inter and Napoli have done when they've had success? You brought in Giuntoli. He was the architect behind the Napoli success. That, to me, is very indicative of where Juve want to go. So that discussion has to be had regardless. And they had to make that decision, and they should do it quickly. And if they bring Thiago Motta in, they need to give him time. They need to give him 2-3 years to do something, because again, this squad is not good enough without improving it. Is my point.
Yeah, I think there's definitely elements of the squad that are just not Juventus level. Absolutely, but at the same time, it's also down to the manager to improve these players, and that's one thing that Thiago Motta has done. I mean, he's taken players that a year ago you would not have thought are good enough to play, even for Bologna, and now he's turned them into players that are wanted by the biggest clubs in Europe, like Joshua Zirkzee, like Riccardo Calafiori. These kind of players.
They're young. I mean, we know,
and that's the whole point I'm making about Allegri, is that this is what you can look at the manager and you can say, oh, this player for Juventus is not good enough, or this player for Juventus is not good enough. Well, is that because they're actually not good enough, or is that because the manager is not able to improve them and develop them? And that was the whole point of the Daniele Adani debate that we had a few weeks ago. about how Inzaghi 2 years ago was taking on players who actually many of them were considered not good enough for Inter, and he's turned them into among the best, and that's down
But
to
it's not just
fantastic.
Inzaghi. As much as I love Simone Inzaghi as a coach and as a tactician, and I was pretty much the only person to do that back in 2017. Since then, it is also the club as a whole. It is also the fact that Beppe Marotta is there, that Piera Ausilio, that they've built the structure, that they understand what kind of football do we want to play, what kind of players do we need to bring into that, and also respect financial parameters and not end up having SWAT teams barge in through the window. Okay? None of that has existed at Juve. None of it. And now you have Giuntoli there and you're trying to do something along those lines. And therefore, that's what I take issue with this Allegri criticism. It's one thing to criticize, but to just blame everything on him is just...
Well, no, they're not. Yeah, of course, absolutely. You can't blame everything on him. There's been lots of things done wrong. But when you're talking about player development, that's the coach. That's simply down on the coach and the coaching team around him.
And the
Absolutely.
quality of the players available to the coach, no? I mean...
Well, yes, absolutely. But again,
you
it
could
comes to,
give
again,
Arrigo
Daniele
Sacchi...
Adani's point is, Inzaghi was taking on players like Mkhitaryan, like Acerbi, like Çalhanoğlu, and he's turned them into world beaters, with his work, with his fantastic work on the training ground, in developing these players,
Well, because the
changing
scouting
them
was
into
done was properly, and the quality of those players, with all due respect, I think Çalhanoğlu and Mkhitaryan are better players than Weston McKennie and
No, but we're
I
not
don't know
talking
what.
about Weston McKennie. We're talking about players like Locatelli. We're talking about players like Chiesa, like Vlahovic. We're
Yeah,
looking at the
Chiesa who's had an
development.
ACL. I mean, Inter have luckily... I mean, I don't...
We're taking Locatelli versus Çalhanoğlu in 2021. There's no even debate which player was at a higher level and which player was seen to have the bigger
Absolutely.
future and wanted by the big clubs and everything. And then look at the way that these two developed. One is completely the same now 3 years later, and one is now maybe the best in his role. That's just one example. But this is the whole thing that we're bringing in a Thiago Motta, that maybe he can make some of these players. Maybe he can make Locatelli become one of the best midfielders in the world, like Çalhanoğlu, because he's good at developing players.
Well, whether... I don't know...
So that's just an example, but that is
Yeah.
why Juventus need to move now, and that's the positive of this bad run, is that hopefully it can lead to to making that decision now, rather than just papering over the cracks.